Marner propels the Buds to a comeback win in Beantown. We'll recap the game and talk about John Tavares' comments about a possible extension. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leafs-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. What's happening, brother? How we feeling on a Wednesday?
Well, feeling better now after that game because it was wasn't feeling too good after the first couple periods.
No, not a good start. Not a good start at all. 30 seconds into the game, you let Pasta loose. He breaks in all alone. And David Pastrnak, he's going to score, right? That guy can bury the biscuit. And he did, and the Maple Leafs find themselves down 2-0 after one. They allowed a goal pretty quick in the second period. They were down 3-0, and the ice was completely tilted in Boston's way. And then Toronto just kept chipping away, and eventually tie the game. They gave up a fourth goal. Then Pontus Goldberg comes up clutch with a game-tying goal in the final minute. And then Magic Mitch, I don't know what it is about this guy at TD Garden, but he just turns into a magician nowadays out there at 3-on-3 in particular. And he ends the game for the Maple Leafs, and they get the full 2 points in the 5-4 win over the Boston Bruins. That's now 3-1 in the season series. The Maple Leafs closed the season series out against the Bruins earlier today, and 3-1 in the 4 meetings. Not too shabby, Dave.
It's a big change from what we've come to expect from this Leafs team against Boston. It wasn't looking so pretty, though. Like it was looking like one of those nights where the Leafs just didn't have their game out the start. Like, here's the thing. We know that the Leafs have a more talented roster than Boston. We know that the Leafs are a team that has had a lot of success against Boston this year. But the one thing we can't, I think maybe the Leafs figured out quite early is if you're not bringing your best effort off the hop against Boston, they're going to take advantage. And like a lot of, maybe lazy. There's a little bit felt like a lazy start for the team. Like, how do you let David Pastrnak get behind you? Like that shouldn't happen, right? Things like, I felt like a lot of like Bruins knew that if the Leafs were going to play a lazy style, they were going to be able to take advantage of it. And that's what happened. And you saw as soon as the Leafs started to dig in, push the pace, and play with a more concerted effort, the game started to turn in their favor.
Yeah, and the Leafs, they made some adjustments with the lineup. They made some in-game adjustments, which I thought worked out really well for Toronto. Obviously, and ended up resulting in a few goals there. You saw Nicky Bobby get back on the score sheet with another goal. Pontus Holmberg. You saw Morgan Riley, another goal from a defenseman. So the secondary scoring, the depth scoring continues to be a theme here coming out of the Four Nations break. So hopefully that can continue as long as possible. But we're still waiting on some of those big boys to get going, right? Nylander, would love to see him start scoring. Matthews, now we're looking at 8 straight games without a goal against a goaltender. Like, yeah, he had the empty netter, but he hasn't scored on a goalie in quite some time. So, Toronto, they're getting that secondary scoring, but still want to see a little bit more from some of the bigger fish. But obviously Mitch Marner came to play, though. And Marner, he did call game, had 2 goals on the night. I thought that he was pretty solid. And I don't know, it seems like he's got a whole lot of pep in his step coming off of the Four Nations break. He looks like a winner, Dave. He looks like a winner, a little more assertive out there with the puck, you might say.
I was very mad at Marner at one point in the game, though, when he had that one play where he tried to do a between the legs backwards pass.
That was awesome.
It was awesome, but it was to the wrong team and to the wrong player.
Oh, we're thinking about the wrong one. The one that he made to Tavares, I thought, where he
Going
like went
overtime. I'm
between
talking
the
about
legs, kicked it back.
the one that Pasternak took down. Was it Marchand? Who was it that took the pass? I don't know. Bruins player took it, went on a breakaway, and he had to get on his high horse and go and chase it down.
Marchand. It was Marchand.
It was Marchand. Like that Mitch, I could do a little less of. The Mitch that came
good hustle to put pressure on Brad. I don't know if he got a stick, if he like
I don't
nicked
think
his stick, or if Marchand just fanned on the pass or fanned on the shot, but he pressured Marchand. So at least he, hustled back to fix his mistake, kind of.
He did. And so, but you saw when he's not overthinking it, the shot that he had on the goal that he scored. Beautiful. That's what Mitch Marner can do, right? The overtime winner, one-on-one. I think people forget just how nasty Mitch Marner is one-on-one. If you ever watched like the
Nets,
because correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't really seen the Leafs in a shootout.
Dude, I was thinking that. I don't know if they've been to a shootout yet this year. Like I could be wrong, but yeah, I was thinking that as the last like couple minutes of overtime. I'm like, have we seen the Buds in a shootout yet this year?
No, they have not played. They had not had a single shootout. This year.
Yeah. But we got to see, a somewhat of a shootout, I guess, like a breakaway goal, and that's what Mitch Marner probably would have pulled out in the shootout, and turned out to be the game winner. I thought that it was great, but I do like that one pass he made to Tavares, like that little give and go between the two of them. Imagine if he would have finished on that, like, would have been all over the highlight reels. It probably still might be, as like an amazing nifty pass. But dude, imagine if that little give and go actually finished and they won the game off of it. Dude, that would have been epic.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a player make a play like that. But Tavares had a little bit of Marner there where it's like he gets this great pass and he puts, and I know, okay, I don't know who the Bruins player was, but I think it was Pasternak was there on the play. And he kind of got his stick there. But like Tavares had a bit of a lane. I was like, maybe a little more of a power move there from Tavares, and he gets in alone. But yeah, that play was just ridiculous. Like the replay, I think, really put it into great light because never seen it before. Don't know how he did it. Don't know how much he's really thought about doing it before. Because like sometimes it's just instinct that plays in. But I don't think I don't even know if Marner's got any Italian in him, but there was a little bit of Italian sauce on that behind the back leg pass or whatever you want to call it.
Low Forza on that one. Yeah. Put a little bit of sauce on it, I would say. But yeah, it was such a nifty little pass, but it's funny, man. Like Marner, I don't know, like it just feels like coming out of the break, we had wondered, like, would that big moment he had in the Canada-US game kind of propel him into a big second half? And a game like tonight where he scores twice, made a couple of big plays, and some, really asserted himself and, made some big, obviously wins the game in overtime. It really makes you think like, maybe, that switch, went on in that game, in that tournament. And I know I can already hear everyone saying, I'm already looking at the comments, and the comment section's going to say, oh, wait till the playoffs. See what happens in playoffs. Wait for the playoffs because he's a great regular season player. And yeah, it's fair. It is completely fair. It is. But it still is nice to see, and we could celebrate it in the moment. We could totally celebrate these moments because we may not have Mitch Marner that much longer. Keep in mind, he is a pending UFA, and I don't know what the situation is going to be moving forward, but I know that if he continues to have games like that and scores goals like that and makes passes like that, that number is going to keep going up and up and up. I don't know how comfortable Brad Treliving and company are going to be with the number that Marner's camp might be looking for if this is his continued play and if this is the Marner we see come playoff time. as well. Speaking of contracts, John Tavares also spoke on his a little bit later in the show. We'll tell you what those comments were and what a deal might look like for Tavares should the Leafs and him come to an early resolution on an extension. But coming up on the other side, we'll dig back into the win. 5-4. The Leafs beat the Bruins in overtime. We'll take a look at the 3 stars of the game. That's coming up next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast.
Today's show is brought to you by Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire somebody yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs. Put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidate fast. And the pressure's on, right? Every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly when Indeed sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidate right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need.
Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, with brand new episodes of the Locked On Leafs podcast. Free and available wherever you get a podcast and also up on YouTube. If you are enjoying the content and you want to, be a daily listener to the podcast, join the family, the Locked On Leafs family. We ask that you do subscribe to us either on your favorite podcasting platform or on YouTube. That would be greatly appreciated. So the Maple Leafs with a 5-4 win over the Boston Bruins at TD Garden, I might add. And prior to today's game, Dave, the Bruins 7-0 when both Marchand and Pastrnak score on the Maple Leafs. No more, though, Dave. No more. The Buds come back from a 3-0 deficit midway through the game to win the game 5-4 in overtime. And as we do on each and every victory podcast, we'll go through our 3 stars of the game. We'll start with the first star for you, Dave. Who was it?
Well, the only reason why the Leafs even had a chance to come back in this game is because Anthony Stolarz had to play the hero. And
first star.
First star because, man, there are some saves he made that probably should have been goals. The dude took some punishment, especially in overtime, to set up the overtime winner. I know he allowed 4 goals in the game. The Leafs weren't exactly playing well in this one. They were outshot. Like, I think when it got to 3-0, they were being outshot like 21-11. Like something ridiculous. Like, they were being outplayed for a good majority of that game, and he had to stand on his head to even give them a chance. The only way you come back from a 3-0 deficit is if your goalie shuts the door and gives you a chance to get back in the game.
100%. Yeah, you mentioned he gave up 4 goals and still had 0.8 goals saved above expectation. So he still saved more goals than what was expected of him. Because, you look at in all situations tonight, the Bruins, 4.8 expected goals. And, that extra 0.8 was a difference between winning and losing the game, Dave, for the Maple Leafs. So, yeah, Anthony Stolarz, he came up big. Even Mitch Marner said after the game, he said, hey, why did he decide to retreat all the way to center ice after scoring the game-winning goal? He wanted to go celebrate with the guy who made the stops, the saves necessary to allow that team to win the game, especially with a couple biggies in overtime. So for sure, he is worthy of a star. I gave mine to Mitch Marner. I mean, 2-goal night. Obviously we talked a lot about the game winner there and how beautiful that was. But, just Mitch Marner, I think is always, he's just, man, he's starting to come up clutch in clutch moments, and you really love to see it, right? Like, it's not something that we're used to seeing out of Mitch Marner. But man, it really, really is. And look, he's just a guy who you're is consistently going out there, and he's playing with a lot of confidence, and that's always been his strength. When he's playing with confidence, he is usually the best player on the ice, and I thought that he was that quite often tonight, specifically in the latter half of that hockey game. So Mitch Marner, 2-goal performance, including the game winner. He got my first star.
Yeah, he had my second star. Part of the reason why I dropped him a star is because I didn't like the start of the game for just the top line in general. They did not look very good defensively. They were kind of
they got ripped apart quick. Like,
yeah,
Nyes came off that line real quick, and Bobby McMahon went up there. They're like, we need someone a little more defensively minded up on that line, and up came Bobby McMahon.
Like, that line just didn't have juice to start, and eventually, it turned around. Marner got his offense going a bit more. You saw Matthews too. He was starting to pick things up. Defensively, I didn't think it was their best game, but offensively, like, if you're not going to play well defensively, you better bring it offensively. So that's what Mitch did tonight. That first, like, I know the overtime goal was nice. I love that shot on the first goal he got. Like, that gave them life. That gave them belief that they could come back in this game. So, credit to Marner. That was a big time moment. Hopefully we see more of those. We played over 25 minutes tonight, which you kind of expect when you're trailing. You're going to be having your top players out there a bit more. But I thought, he redeemed himself, with his performance in the third and overtime.
I thought, like, the goal they were talking about there on the power play, that was a really nice play also by Matthews to get the pass over, but also the, like, double clutch, right? To bring it back, and then eventually found an opening seam there through Jeremy Swayman. And it was a really, really nice goal. 2 beauties tonight by Mitch Marner. My second star I gave to Morgan Rielly. Look, he's a guy who we've talked a lot about this year, and often in a negative light, but dude, you can't knock what he did tonight. He played 27 minutes, 39 seconds. 27 minutes and 39 seconds. He was a horse after Chris Tanev went down to injury, which we'll get to an update on that in just a moment. He had to step up and play a lot of minutes tonight, and he did. He ended up with 3 blocks and 4 points, Dave. A 4-point night for Morgan Rielly. We haven't seen, that offensive outburst from him in quite some time. He scored a goal, 3 helpers, and, stepped up big when the team needed him. And when they lost one of their better defensemen, Rielly really stepped up. So he got my second star.
Yeah, I'll just want to give an honorable mention to Nick Robertson, because obviously he scored a goal, set up.
That was my third star.
He tied. He also set up the goal that tied the game. But I wanted to give a special shout out to McCabe, Rielly, and OEL. You lose Chris Tanev fifth after he played only 50 seconds in the game. Like, you had to go down, not only down a defenseman, down probably one of your top defensive defensemen. And Rielly played, you mentioned 27 minutes, almost 28 minutes. OEL 27.5 minutes. McCabe over 25 minutes. And OEL and Rielly, what a night. Like, +3. They were, they anchored that blue line tonight. And they also did, as you said, on the offensive side, right? They combined for 6 points between the two of them. So that's what we need to see from these guys. Play, do what you can defense. And I thought Rielly had some good reads, 3 blocks in the game too, some good reads defensively, and then was a factor offensively. That's the Morgan Rielly we need down the stretch here. If I said it, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. Rielly hasn't been having a great year, but the narrative can change if you pick up your game in the right time. And no better time to do it than when you're shorthanded.
Well, you know what, too? Like, the fact that he had a nice 2-week break in the middle of the season, allow that body to rest up and heal. Like, I'm sure that's going to do wonders for Rielly, too. Hopefully that'll allow him to have a nice big second half surge. I had Nick Robertson as my third star though. Like I didn't have an honorable mention. I gave him my third star. Scored again tonight. Ended up with 4 shots. I thought he was feisty too, getting into some scrums, mucking it up a bit. See him and Patrick Wotherspoon kind of jawing at each other. I was
little
like,
whack at Swayman. Love it.
Yeah, a little whack there at Swayman, going and agitating, and like he's not backing down from fights. I saw he was getting into some puck battles along the wall. Look, Nick Robertson must have been challenged coming out of the break. Must have been challenged. And we talked about it. Like Robertson's days as the Maple Leaf are numbered with Calle Yarncroc returning, Connor Dewar coming back, the assumption that the Leafs are going to add another forward or two at the deadline. You know, he's the first guy on the chopping block, whether it's via trade or waivers. And he's proving, no, I can either be here or be of service to another team in the NHL. I am an NHLer, and he's looked the part the last couple of games here. And, you know, again, he has always had a great shot. He's another one where it's about confidence. He's playing with some good confidence right now. And when he's confident and he's playing aggressive and he's shooting, you know, actually shooting the puck, things usually go pretty well for Nicky Bobby. And I thought that he played well tonight. So I gave him the third star.
Yeah, the shot, you know, we talked a lot about like needing to add the depth scoring and finding the depth scoring and seeing a bit more consistency out of Nick Robertson. Like you're finally getting that production from him, and it's an interesting time, obviously, because now it's like his name's coming up in trade rumors, and so the great thing now is it gives the Leafs a little bit of oh, you thought we were going to be giving Nick Robertson away? No.
Add a little value now.
Exactly, right? Now, I understand some people are going to be like, well, no, you want to sell him when he's getting hot? This is exactly when you do it. If a team is like, okay, like we'll give you, like, okay, we'll up our offer a bit more, right? And not just try to fleece you for Nick Robertson, because look, like he beat Jers, like Swayman was pretty good in this game, right? He wasn't giving the Leafs much, and he beat him clean, right? Beat him clean with that shot, and even on the Holmberg goal, like the forecheck, that's the side of, those are the sort of things I'm sure Craig Berube, when he's talking to Nick Robertson, like, see, if you do a little bit more of that, you're gonna have more success, right? Exactly. I'm sure there's probably a little bit of that going on. So I do think that, you know, it's a good development for the Leafs that Nick Robertson scoring, obviously, because it's, you know, leading to the wins, but it's also put in the position where they don't feel like they have to now sell low. Potentially now this will help, as we said, increase his trade value.
Yeah, and I was looking at the underlying numbers of that makeshift third line when they made the swap. Nyes went down and played with Domi and Robertson. They played almost 5 minutes together at 5-on-5 tonight. Their expected goals was 100%. 100% expected goals as a line. I think their shots was 8-0. The shots on net, just pulling it up here. I had it a second ago. Yeah, 8-0. Were the shot, no, 3-0, 8-0 in terms of with the Fenwick. So that's shot attempts. So 8-0 in shot attempts, 3-0 in actual shots. They scored twice as a pair. Or as a line, because Riley also scored while that line was out there. 3 scoring chances, so they were quite good, and that's what you want to see out of your depth. You know, a third line that's more of a scoring third line than a checking third line. Well, they were definitely providing some offense for the team tonight, and thought Nicky Bobby played extremely well. Dave, we did unfortunately lose a couple soldiers in the game. Chris Tanev left the game in the first period with an upper body injury, and apparently William Nylander felt some stiffness or something going on, and he didn't take to the ice at all for overtime. What can you tell us about those injuries?
Yes, he said Craig Berube said that something was bothering Nylander, which kept him out of overtime. We clearly saw it had something to do with like the hand, wrist areas. You wonder if maybe a little whack or he kind of jammed it. We don't see Willie missed time, right? Probably been one of the more durable players on this Leafs team. So, it's going to be tough. Fortunately, the Leafs do have a little bit of time, right? They don't play again until Friday. So you get a little bit of a break to maybe take your time to see if they can get those guys back potentially. The Tanev one was more concerning though, because it was deemed upper body, kind of looked like the ribs, in my opinion. Like it looked like it didn't look like an arm or shoulder, because kind of saw him moving his arm when he was coming off the ice there. And he kind of felt hunched over. Berube did say he'll need to be evaluated. Didn't have a further update than that, which that's usually not a good sign when they have to go and get those further evaluations. And I think that you're so thin right now on the blue line. Hakanpää, I don't know what's going on with Hakanpää. We don't know where his status is like. So Philip Myers is the next guy up, and the pairings are going to get kind of thrown into a blender if Tanev's not able to go.
Yeah, probably. We'll probably end up seeing McCabe flip back over to the right, and we'll probably see Riley, McCabe, and OEL and whoever, and we'll see what ends up happening. I do wonder if it spurs some trade earlier than later. Like if they plan on bringing in a depth defenseman of some kind, if Tanev's going to be out for any amount of time, perhaps they get kind of on it when it comes to bringing in that defenseman, maybe a little earlier than later. We'll see. We shall see. Speaking of the trade deadline, will there be an extension for John Tavares or Mitch Marner ahead of the trade deadline? Well, Tavares spoke on just that earlier today. Why don't we convey those comments and give our thoughts on it next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast? The Locked On Leafs podcast continues. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you here as we are each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, with a brand new episode of the Locked On Leafs podcast. We are, 9 days away from the NHL trade deadline? I think it's March 7th, next Friday. So 9 days away from the NHL trade deadline. And John Tavares was asked about a potential deal. Maybe. Does he want one? Is there talks? What's the latest there with JT and the Leafs and a potential extension by deadline day?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we haven't really heard either one talk about their contract. I mean, they've both kind of made it clear that they didn't really want to discuss much of their contract, but I ain't going to stop reporters from asking. And so basically, there was a question. Luke Fox asked Tavares in Boston if he'd like to get the contract all taken care of before the trade deadline, because one thing that teams also consider when they do these extensions is, if we figure out the number now, and if we want to go and add a guy maybe with term at the trade deadline, we got a little bit of a better sense of our cap picture, right? They did that when they signed Jake McCabe to his extension. We thought the same maybe with Matthew Nyes. You see if maybe you can get that number sort of sorted out, or a ballpark idea, so you know what you can do. And Tavares agreed with that, where, if there was a chance to get a deal done, why not get it done? I'll put up the quote here for those who are watching on YouTube. So if we have the opportunity to get it done, I'd love to do that. If not, when that time comes, we'll get there. Just looking forward to continuing my journey here as a Leaf, and obviously wanted to continue past this season. So kind of a couple points to that. Obviously, one being he's not going to put the team in a position where it's like he ain't going to do a Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and saying, like, we don't get a deal done by the trade deadline, don't even bother coming to me, or I'll look at what free agency's like. We know that Tavares wants to stay here. I'm sure this just would just ease that decision for both sides, but it's nice that he's not like, oh, I want to get it done and over so I don't have to think about it. That's not also in his mind. He did say that, but clearly it's out there, right? And so some people are like, well, if he's motivated to get it done, And if the Leafs feel like that this is a move they want to do,
well, how motivated, right? How motivated are you to get it done?
You got to have two to dance, right? You can't have one saying, "Yeah, let's get it done." And the other side's like, we like the idea, but we're not sure if we're ready to fully commit.
Well, I just think like why would the Leafs feel the need to do it now?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, why would they feel like they want to get this done as soon as possible? They probably want to let things play out. And unless Tavares is willing to take some sort of like absolute sweetheart deal, I don't think it makes sense for the Buds to make this extension, to sign him to an extension before the season's over. Like, I think they want to see how things play out unless he's willing to take a rather large hometown discount where the Leafs just simply have to make that signing because it just makes sense at that point. What that number looks like, I don't know. Like, I really don't like what do you think a fair value for Tavares is right now? Like, he's going to be 34 years old by the time July 1 comes around, where he's due for that extension. Like, what do you think is a fair market value for Tavares?
Market value, I've heard people say that, maybe in the $7 million range.
See, I don't know. Like, I don't really see that being his value. Like, it's just because the age to me,
that's it,
is where I find it. Like, to me, like, doesn't Ryan O'Reilly look like a decent comparable to you? Like, to me, the Ryan O'Reilly deal is a decent comp. Like, they're both
I like the $4.5-5 million range for like that makes a lot more sense. If you're the Leafs, if you can get John Tavares in the $4.5 million range, sign me up. Right?
You're ready? You take that deal? 4 by 4.5. That's the exact deal Ryan O'Reilly signed in Nashville.
Do it.
You take that right now.
I would absolutely take that right now. The cap going up, right? Even if he becomes your third line center going forward, third line centers are not coming in very cheap, right?
Yeah.
Scott Lawn, we're talking about as a third line center. That's $3 million. So you're paying an extra $1.5 million for John Tavares. I know that might seem like a lot, but talking about
$3 million. That was $3 million like 4 years ago.
Exactly.
Right? You look at percentage of the cap, we're probably looking at 3C is gonna cost you between $4 and $5 million going forward, anyways.
Right. That's what happens when the cap goes up. Doesn't mean that these the third line centers are like, oh yeah, I know, I'm comfortable taking what I was taking before. It's like, no, there's a little more chunk, more of the pie going around. You can pay it. And 4.5, like I don't know why I don't like. Some people are saying he could have got I heard $5 million at one point, right? Would he take 5? We're talking about a guy who's making $11 million to get him down to 4.5. That's a huge savings for the Leafs going forward, right?
Well, I think it has to do with numbers, like years on the deal.
Yes,
I think that's where for me it matters, because like if he just wants a 1-year deal, okay, I could see $7 million working on a 1-year deal, but if he wants multiple years, like again, he's 34 and
secures the rest of his playing career in Toronto.
It's not that. It's just like if you're the Leafs, like I'm looking at it from a Leafs perspective. Like the more years you're tacking on, the less AAV it's got to be, and like significantly less. So like, 4 or like a 1-year deal at $6-7 million. Okay, I could see that making sense for next year for Tavares, but are you going to get $6-7 million worth of value 2, 3, 4 years from now by the end of that deal? Probably not, to be honest with you. So if you're the Leafs, does it make a whole lot of sense? I don't think so. But at 4.5, that's where you're looking at it. It just makes way more sense if you're Toronto. And if he's not willing to take a deal like that, all right, we'll wait. Like we'll wait. Prove to us you can do something in the playoffs then, that you still got it come playoff time. And if you do, then we'll pay you. Then we can talk about that $6-7 million contract. But if you want to sign it now, this is what we're prepared to give you. That's how I'd be approaching this if I were the Maple Leafs. And I don't know if Tavares wants to take that big of a discount, but if he wants to get something done by the trade deadline, I'm sure that's how it's going to have to happen.
Yeah, the Leafs are probably like, if you want to get paid, if you want to get your deal done now, this is what we think would be worth it for us. And look, when we're talking about paying a guy for long term, you just had Chris Tanev sign here for 6 years. 6 years at 4.5. He's up there in age, right? He's 35. We also know that there's a bit of, is he going to play the whole time in whole deal, right? Jake McCabe, he's 31. You just gave him a long-term deal too, right? But you kept the AAV down because I think there's also a little bit of, not mistaken, there's a little deferred money in the Jake McCabe deal.
There could be, but
right. But like you kept the AAV down because you gave the term. So if you're the Leafs, it's probably going to be your best bet. Especially, look, the salary cap is going up significantly. Yes, I know you want to go and you want to make some other deals, but you're also like looking at what you have done now and what you need to get done. It's not a lot of heavy lifting when you really look at the full picture of this Leafs roster. Yeah, you have to make some adjustments throughout the lineup, but nothing major that you have to think about right now. So the term, I think the most important thing is getting that AAV in the right situation. If it costs you a little bit of term, I'd rather do what Nashville did with Ryan O'Reilly. All right, you wanna have this long of a contract, you got to come down on the AAV for us.
Now O'Reilly signed that deal at 32, not 34. So like there was a couple more years of like not quite prime play because he was exiting the prime, but it's like, okay, there's still a couple more years of great hockey left in you before we get to those, those late years. Whereas Tavares is already now 34, and it's like, how many more years can you give? Like we talked about this yesterday on the podcast. Like, yes, the production is there, right? Point per game player, damn near this season, but the underlying numbers have definitely taken a dip the last few months, and it's like, okay. Are they going to continue to do that over the next couple of years? And if that's the case, you do have to think long and hard about what you want to do and how much money you want to tie up in a declining asset that is John Tavares. Like, yeah, it means a lot to the team. He's a hometown kid. He came home. He was your captain for 6 years, but it's a business. You got to make some tough decisions. And I'll be curious to see what the Maple Leafs decide to do. I don't know. I'd be very surprised if we see an extension.
I was going to say that too. Like, I would be surprised. I'd be surprised if the deal got done. I can also understand why maybe they would consider it, but I think at this rate, if he's true to his word that he wants to stay a Leaf, and clearly the Leafs have also has expressed a desire to keep him because centers are.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah. Not only that, centers are hard to find. You look at
how long is Tavares a center for? That's like another legitimate question.
Well, second line center. I think if you move him to 3C, I can see it maybe helping and playing fewer minutes.
Unless the boots go, if the boots go in the next year or two, you don't want that in the middle.
That's true, but how? Again, we're talking like we're not giving this guy a 7 or 8 year deal, right?
Oh, but they could go next year. They could go 2 months from now. I mean, it happens quick for a lot of these guys. Where once the skating goes, it's tough, and we've seen that happen around the NHL with a lot of guys. So if you give him a 4-year deal, and the guy is slow as molasses in year 2 or 3 of that deal. Now you're kind of saddled with it. You got to move him to the wing. You got to find someone else to play 3C, play second line center. But that's in the far in the future, I suppose. But I do expect Tavares to return to Toronto. Like I do think that he'll be a Maple Leaf. I don't know what the number is going to be to where they're both happy. I just don't think it really benefits the Leafs to make it happen before the trade deadline. That's all.
Yeah, I don't see a reason to really rush this. They got other priorities right now.
Marner? You try and get Marner done? Save that, actually. Let's get into that tomorrow.
Yeah.
Let's get it tomorrow.
We got how many days now between games? I think we got a little time to talk about it.
Few days between games. Leafs aren't back in action until Friday against the New York Rangers. All right, that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow, but until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.